March 15, 2019. The entire stunt crew walked off the Warriors' last stand set at 6:47 a.m., 23 professionals with a combined 60 years of experience. They'd rather lose their paychecks than work another day with Chuck Morrison. The man who'd made 40 action films without a single serious injury had become untouchable overnight. One phone call from the Stuntmen's Association. One word whispered in the right ear. Done. Chuck stood in the empty soundstage, watching $50,000 worth of equipment sit idle. The producers were in panic mode. The insurance company was asking questions, and somewhere in the shadows, Jack Malone was about to discover that some ghosts don't stay buried. They wait 15 years, then strike when you think you're finally safe. The day Chuck Morrison's calm response would rewrite everything Hollywood thought they knew about revenge. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Chuck Morrison stood motionless in the cavernous soundstage, his weathered hands hanging loose at his sides. At 62, he still carried himself like the Marine he'd been 40 years ago. Shoulders squared, spine straight, eyes constantly scanning for threats. The abandoned equipment cast long shadows under the fluorescent lights, a half-built car chase rig, pyrotechnic charges lined up like sleeping grenades, and 3 cameras pointed at nothing. His phone buzzed. Producer Larry Kellerman, probably having another panic attack. Chuck, we're bleeding money. Every hour costs us. I know what it costs. Chuck's voice carried the same calm that had made him famous in 100 action sequences. No shouting, no dramatics, just quiet certainty. The association won't budge. They're saying you're compromised. What the hell does that even mean? Your safety record is spotless, better than spotless. You're Chuck fucking Morrison. Chuck walked to the abandoned pyrotechnic station, studying the carefully arranged charges. Someone had been setting up the explosion sequence for Scene 43, the warehouse finale where his character, Detective Ray Sterling, would dive through a wall of flame to save the hostage. It was supposed to be his signature moment, the shot that proved to Hollywood he could still carry an action film at his age. They mentioned a name, he said, picking up one of the small charges. Jack Malone. The silence on the other end stretched 5 seconds too long. Never heard of him, Larry finally said. Chuck smiled without humor. In 40 years of Hollywood bullshit, he'd learned to read lies through phone lines. Try again. Look, there might have been some ancient history, but how ancient? Another pause. 15 years. Maybe 16. Before my time, Chuck. Some coordinator who had an accident got blacklisted. Ancient fucking history. Chuck set the charge down exactly where he'd found it. In the Marines, attention to detail had kept him alive through 2 tours. In Hollywood, it had kept his stunts flawless for 4 decades. Now someone was counting on him for getting that discipline. What kind of accident? Fire stunt went wrong. Kid died. Malone disappeared. End of story. Chuck, this is irrelevant. We need solutions, not ghost stories. Chuck ended the call and walked to the center of the soundstage. The silence felt wrong. Not peaceful, but expectant. Like the moment before an ambush when the jungle goes quiet and every instinct screams danger. His second phone rang. The secure line only 3 people knew about. Mr. Morrison? The voice was young, female, nervous. This is Jennifer Walsh from Bakersfield Community Bank. You asked us to call if anyone made inquiries about your special account. Chuck's pulse quickened, but his breathing stayed steady. What kind of inquiries? A man came in this morning asking about accounts established in 2004. He had proper documentation, said he was settling an estate. He specifically mentioned the account number you flagged. The account Chuck had opened 15 years ago. The one that had been sending monthly payments to a post office box in Bakersfield ever since. $5,000 a month, every month for 15 years. Nearly $1 million total. Did he leave a name? He said his name was Jack Malone. Chuck closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his lids, he saw it again. The warehouse set in Valencia. The fire stunt gone wrong. The young man screaming as real flames replaced the safe Hollywood magic. And afterward, the older man, the coordinator, kneeling in the ashes, holding what was left of his protege. The man Chuck had destroyed to save his own career. Mr. Morrison, are you there? Thank you, Jennifer. Follow the protocols we discussed. Chuck hung up and looked around the empty soundstage one more time. 23 stunt professionals had walked away from guaranteed work because someone had whispered the right poison in the right ears. Someone who knew exactly which pressure points would cripple a production. Someone who had been planning this for 15 years. Chuck pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd memorized but never called. Desert Auto Repair. This is Jack. The voice was older now, rougher around the edges, but still recognizable. Chuck had heard it countless times in his nightmares, always asking the same question, "Why did my boy have to die for your shot?" "Hello, Jack. I think it's time we talked." The line went quiet, except for the distant sound of air tools and Mexican radio. Finally, Jack Malone laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Chuck Morrison. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. The crew walkout was just the beginning, wasn't it?" "Oh, Chuck. You have no idea." Now Chuck smiled too, and for the first time in weeks, he felt like himself again. Not the aging action star worried about relevance, but the Marine who'd learned that when someone declares war, you don't negotiate. You win. "Then I guess I'll see you soon. Count on it." Jack Malone set the phone down with the deliberate precision of a man who'd spent 15 years practicing control. The handset clicked against the scarred metal desk, the sound echoing through Desert Auto Repair like a closing door. Around him, the familiar symphony of his exile continued. The pneumatic hiss of air tools, the ranchera music drifting from Miguel's radio, the tick of cooling metal under Bakersfield's relentless sun. He wiped his hands on the red shop rag, though they weren't dirty. Old habit. In the stunt business, you always cleaned your hands before touching anything that mattered. Now the only things that mattered were carburetors and transmission fluid, but muscle memory died hard. "Todo bien, jefe?" Miguel called from under the Chevy Silverado, his voice muffled by metal and concern. The kid had been working here 3 years and still couldn't read Jack's moods. Probably because Jack had spent 15 years perfecting the art of having no moods at all. "Fine," Jack said. "Just finish the brake job." Through the open bay doors, heat shimmers rose from the asphalt like ghosts. Bakersfield in August was hell's waiting room, a place where Hollywood refugees came to disappear. Jack had chosen it specifically for its emptiness, its distance from everything he'd lost. Here, nobody knew that Jack Thunder Malone had once orchestrated the most spectacular stunts in film history. Here, he was just the guy who could fix your transmission for $200 less than the dealer. The bell above the front door chimed, and Jack looked up to see Sarah walking in with 2 cups of coffee from Rosa's across the street. His chest tightened the way it always did when he saw her, not with desire, but with the knowledge that she deserved better than a man who'd killed his career with gasoline and guilt. "Thought you might need this," she said, setting 1 cup on his desk. Sarah had been coming around for 6 months now, ever since her Honda started making noises that sounded like crying. The car was fine after 2 days, but she kept finding reasons to visit. Jack knew why, and he knew he should stop it, but her presence was the only thing that made the shop feel less like a tomb. "Thanks." He took the coffee, inhaling the bitter comfort of it. Sarah was 53, with silver-streaked hair and laugh lines earned through a divorce and 2 kids she'd raised alone. She worked at the county assessor's office and had never seen any of the films that had made Jack famous. It was one of the things he loved about her, though he'd never said so. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, settling into the folding chair beside his desk. The chair had been Tommy's once, back when Jack still believed he could train someone without getting them killed. Just a phone call. Sarah studied his face with the patience of a woman who'd learned to read men's silences. "Bad news?" Jack sipped his coffee and watched Miguel's boots protruding from under the Silverado. The kid was maybe 25, Tommy's age when he died. Miguel had the same fearless confidence, the same way of moving like the world couldn't touch him. Jack had nightmares about Miguel sometimes, about fire and screaming and the smell of burning hair. "Someone from my old life," Jack said finally. "The movie business?" She knew the outline of his story. Former stunt coordinator, bad accident, early retirement. He'd never told her about the fire, about Tommy Richardson's last words, about the 15 years of blood money from Chuck Morrison. Some stories were too sharp to share, even with someone who might understand. Yeah. The coffee shop across the street was filling up with the lunch crowd, office workers and truckers seeking refuge from the heat. Jack had eaten there every Tuesday for 6 years, always ordering the same thing, always sitting at the counter where he could watch the street. Routine was armor against memory, but today the armor felt thin. His phone rang again. The shop line, not his cell. Jack let it ring twice before answering. Desert Auto Repair. Mr. Malone? This is David Kellerman from Pinnacle Productions. I have a proposition that might interest you. Jack's hand tightened on the receiver. Kellerman. He knew the name. Larry's nephew, maybe, or younger brother. Hollywood was a family business, and grudges passed down like heirlooms. We're not interested, Jack said. I think you'll want to hear this. It's about Chuck Morrison's new film. We're having some technical difficulties. We need someone with your expertise. Sarah was watching him now, her coffee forgotten. She'd seen him take 1,000 business calls, but something in his posture must have changed. I'm retired. For $2 million? Mr. Malone, we're prepared to offer you full creative control. Your own crew, your own schedule. Just 6 weeks of work. Jack closed his eyes and saw Tommy's face. Young, eager, trusting. The boy who'd followed him into hell because he'd believed Jack Malone was the best. I'll call you back, Jack said, and hung up. Sarah reached across and touched his hand. Jack? What is it? He looked at her, really looked, memorizing the concern in her eyes, the gentle strength that had somehow found its way into his carefully constructed emptiness. Whatever Chuck Morrison was planning, it would destroy everything Jack had built here. The shop, his peace, maybe even Sarah. But Tommy Richardson deserved better than a father who'd spent 15 years hiding in the desert. I think, Jack said quietly, it's time to go home. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Sarah's hand remained on his, warm and steady, but Jack could feel the question building in her eyes. She'd spent 6 months learning to navigate his careful distances, respecting the boundaries he'd built around the wreckage of his past. Now those boundaries were crumbling, and they both knew it. Home? Sarah's voice was careful, neutral. I thought this was home. Jack stood abruptly, walking to the open bay door where the heat hit him like a physical force. Bakersfield sprawled before him, flat, honest, unforgiving, a place where the past stayed buried unless you went digging for it. But someone had been digging, and now the bones were surfacing. I need to make another call, he said. Private. Sarah nodded, gathering her purse with the quiet dignity of a woman who'd learned when to push and when to retreat. I'll be at Rose's if you need me. After she left, Jack locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. Miguel emerged from under the Silverado, wiping his hands. Cerramos temprano? Early closing meant lost revenue, and Miguel knew Jack never left money on the table. Take the afternoon off. Paid. Miguel's eyebrows rose, but he didn't argue. Jack waited until the kid's Civic disappeared around the corner, then went to his office and opened the bottom desk drawer. Inside, beneath 15 years of receipts and tax records, lay a manila envelope he'd promised himself he'd never open again. The letter was postmarked 3 weeks ago, sent to his private P.O. box, the one only 2 people knew about. The return address was smudged, but Jack recognized the careful handwriting even before he unfolded the single sheet of paper. Jack, by the time you read this, the wheels will already be in motion. Chuck Morrison's new film, Last Stand, isn't about his comeback. It's about your reckoning. You think you've been forgotten, but Hollywood remembers everything. Every shortcut, every covered-up failure, every young stuntman who trusted the wrong mentor. Tommy wasn't the only one. There were others before him, others after. The accidents you blamed on equipment failure, human error, acts of God. I have the files, the real investigation reports from Valencia, the witness statements that never made it to the official record, the toxicology results showing Tommy had trace amounts of sedatives in his system, sedatives that someone slipped him because he was asking too many questions about the rig. Morrison knows. He's always known. The payoff money you've been taking? It wasn't conscience money, Jack. It was investment capital. 15 years of buying your guilt, your silence, your compliance. He's been planning this moment since Tommy's funeral. Last Stand will be your last stand, too. They're going to offer you the job, stunt coordinator for Morrison's big comeback. You'll take it because you think you owe Tommy's memory that much. Because you think you can find redemption in the same industry that destroyed you. But it's a trap. Every stunt, every sequence, every safety protocol has been designed to fail. Morrison wants you to die the same way Tommy did, publicly, horribly, with cameras rolling. Justice, he calls it. The final scene in his perfect revenge. You can run. Disappear deeper into the desert, change your name again, abandon everything you've built in Bakersfield. It might even work. Or you can fight. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. Production starts in 2 weeks. A friend. Jack's hands trembled as he set the letter down. The fluorescent light above his desk flickered, casting shifting shadows across the cramped office. Outside, the heat shimmers continued their ghostly dance, but now they looked like flames. Tommy Richardson, 25 years old, eager to prove himself, trusting Jack Malone to keep him safe. Jack remembered the kid's last words before the fire stunt. "You sure about this rig, boss?" Something feels off, and Jack, impatient to nail the shot before losing the light, had waved away his concerns. The explosion had been perfect, the firewall spectacular. Tommy's scream when the escape hatch jammed, that had been real. Jack pulled out his cell phone and dialed the number from memory. Pinnacle Productions. David Kellerman speaking. "It's Jack Malone. I'll take the job." "Excellent. Mr. Morrison will be thrilled. We can have contracts ready by one condition. I choose my own crew." "Of course. Whatever you need." Jack hung up and stared at the letter again. A friend. Someone who knew about the toxicology reports, the witness statements, the cover-up. Someone who wanted Jack to fight back instead of running, or someone who wanted him to walk willingly into Chuck Morrison's trap. The bell chimed as Sarah returned, her face tight with worry. "Jack, what's happening? Really?" He looked at her, this good woman who'd found her way into his careful emptiness, and felt something crack inside his chest. Whatever came next would destroy this life he'd built, this fragile piece he'd constructed from routine and distance. But Tommy Richardson deserved the truth, even if the truth killed them both. "I'm going back to Los Angeles," Jack said, the words feeling like broken glass in his throat. "For a job." Sarah's face went very still. She set her purse down and closed the door behind her, the small click echoing in the sudden quiet of the shop. The air conditioning unit rattled overhead, fighting a losing battle against the desert heat seeping through concrete and steel. "How long?" she asked. 6 weeks, maybe more. Jack watched her process this, saw the careful way she arranged her expression to hide the hurt. He'd done this before, disappeared without explanation, left good people wondering what they'd done wrong. It was easier than admitting the truth, that everything he touched eventually burned. "I should pack up the shop," he said, looking anywhere but at her face. "Miguel can handle the simple stuff, but anything complicated—" "Jack!" Sarah's voice cut through his rambling. "Look at me." He forced himself to meet her eyes. There was no anger there, just the resigned sadness of a woman who'd watched too many men run from things they couldn't name. "Whatever this is really about," she said, "you don't have to face it alone." The kindness in her voice nearly broke him. For 6 months, she'd been patient with his silences, gentle with his distances. She deserved better than cryptic explanations and sudden departures. She deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as he could bear to tell. 15 years ago, I made a mistake," he said. "Someone died because of it. Someone young, someone who trusted me." Sarah nodded, waiting. "I thought I'd buried it out here, the guilt, the responsibility. But the past doesn't stay buried, does it? It just waits underground, getting stronger." His phone rang again. Jack let it go to voicemail, but the sound seemed to echo long after it stopped. Sarah moved closer, her hand finding his arm. "You could say no," she said quietly. "Whatever they're offering, whatever they're threatening, you could walk away. We could go somewhere else, start over." The word "we" hit him like a physical blow. Sarah was offering to run with him, to abandon her life here for a man who'd never even told her he loved her. The generosity of it, the simple faith, made him understand why he had to go back, not for redemption, not for justice, but because some debts couldn't be paid by running. "I can't," he said. "Not this time." Miguel appeared in the back doorway, hesitating when he saw their faces. "Perdón, jefe, I forgot my—" "It's fine," Jack said. "Actually, Miguel, come here. We need to talk." The kid approached cautiously, reading the tension in the room with the instincts of someone who'd grown up navigating adult complications. Jack saw Tommy in his careful movements, in the way he held himself ready to bolt or fight depending on what came next. "I'm going away for a while," Jack said. "Los Angeles. Work." Miguel's eyes widened. In 3 years, Jack had never mentioned his Hollywood past, never acknowledged the framed movie posters in the office or the industry magazines that still arrived at his P.O. box. To Miguel, he was just the gringo mechanic who paid well and didn't ask questions about green cards. "The movie business?" Miguel asked. "Yeah. Es peligroso." The question came out quietly, but Jack heard the real concern underneath. Miguel had lost a father to dangerous work, construction accident when he was 16. He understood that some jobs came with prices that couldn't be calculated in dollars. "Maybe," Jack admitted. "Probably." Sarah made a small sound, quickly suppressed. Jack wanted to comfort her, to promise he'd be careful, but the anonymous letter had stripped away his ability to make promises he might not keep. His phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, but the words made his blood freeze. "Contracts being messengered tonight. Production meeting Monday. Don't disappoint us, Jack. Tommy wouldn't want you to disappoint us. DK." The casual mention of Tommy's name felt like a slap. Jack deleted the message, but the damage was done. They knew exactly which buttons to push, exactly how to make him dance to their tune. 15 years of planning, and he was walking into it with his eyes wide open. "I need to make some calls," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Miguel, take Sarah to Rosa's. Get something to eat. On me." "Jack," Sarah started. "Please. I'll explain more later, I promise. But right now, I need to figure out who I can trust." After they left, Jack pulled out a business card he'd carried for 15 years without ever using. Danny Torino, his former assistant coordinator, now running his own operation in Santa Monica. If anyone would know what was really happening on Chuck Morrison's film, it would be Danny. The number rang once before going to voicemail. No message, just dead silence. Jack tried again. Same result. He called 3 more names from his old contacts list. Same thing. Either every stunt coordinator in Los Angeles had simultaneously stopped answering their phones, or word had already gone out. Jack Malone was toxic. Stay away, don't get involved, let the past settle its own scores. Outside, the heat shimmers danced like flames, and Jack felt the trap closing around him with the inevitability of gravity. Staring at Danny Torino's business card until the edges blurred. The silence felt heavier than the heat, pressing down on him like the weight of 15 buried years. He'd built this life on the principle that the past couldn't reach him if he stayed small enough, quiet enough. Now he understood how naive that had been. In Hollywood, grudges aged like wine, growing more potent in darkness. He tried one more number. Marcus Webb, an old rigger who'd worked the Valencia fire with him. The phone didn't even ring this time. Disconnected. Marcus had been asking questions after Tommy's death, pushing for a real investigation instead of the sanitized report that blamed equipment failure. Jack wondered what had happened to make him disappear so completely that even his phone number died. The anonymous letter lay on his desk like an accusation. Tommy wasn't the only one. There were others before him, others after. Jack's memory began excavating incidents he'd forced himself to forget. The cable snapping on the Midnight Runner set, sending a stunt woman to the hospital with a shattered pelvis. The motorcycle that had inexplicably lost its brakes during a chase sequence, killing a rider whose name Jack couldn't even remember now. How many accidents had he attributed to bad luck or human error when something darker was orchestrating the failures? His hands shook as he opened his laptop and searched for news about Chuck Morrison's comeback film. Last Stand. The irony of the title cut deep. Production was scheduled to begin in 12 days. The budget was astronomical, the stunts described as unprecedented and death-defying. Morrison, now 68, would be performing many of his own stunts, just like the old days. Jack scrolled through the cast list and crew credits, looking for names he recognized. Most were strangers, young coordinators and riggers who'd grown up watching Morrison's films, probably thrilled to work with the legend. They had no idea they were being positioned as collateral damage in a revenge plot 15 years in the making. Then he found a name that made his stomach lurch: Kevin Richardson, listed as second unit director. Tommy's younger brother. The kid who'd been 17 when Tommy died, who'd screamed at Jack during the funeral that he'd killed his brother for a stupid movie stunt. Kevin would be 32 now, old enough to have built his own career in the industry, young enough to still burn with the need for justice. The anonymous letter suddenly took on a different weight. A friend. Not a stranger warning him about Morrison's trap, but Tommy's brother orchestrating a confrontation that would force the truth into the light. Kevin had been in film school when Tommy died, studying to be a director. He would have access to files, contacts, the kind of industry connections needed to uncover buried secrets. Jack's phone rang, jolting him from his spiraling thoughts. Sarah's number. "Jack? Miguel and I are still at Rosa's. He's asking questions about the movies you worked on. I think you should come over here." Through Rosa's window, Jack could see Miguel gesturing animatedly while Sarah listened with growing concern. The kid had probably looked him up online, found the old articles about Jack Thunder Malone, Hollywood's most innovative stunt coordinator. Before the fire, before Tommy, before everything turned to ash. "I'll be there in 5 minutes, Jack said. But as he stood to leave, his laptop chimed with an email. No sender name, just an IP address that meant nothing to him. The subject line read, "What really happened in Valencia?" Jack's finger hovered over the delete key. He'd spent 15 years avoiding this truth, accepting Morrison's blood money in exchange for silence. Opening this email would destroy whatever remained of his carefully constructed ignorance. He clicked it open. The email contained a single video file, grainy security footage from the Valencia set. Jack recognized the fire rig immediately, the one that had killed Tommy. But this wasn't the official footage that had been submitted to investigators. The timestamp showed this was from 20 minutes before the stunt, when the set should have been cleared except for essential personnel. On screen, a figure in coveralls approached Tommy's escape hatch. Jack watched in horrified recognition as the person, identity obscured by the camera angle, deliberately jammed the release mechanism with what looked like a metal shim. The sabotage took less than 30 seconds. Clean, professional, calculated. The figure turned toward the camera just before walking away. Even through the pixelated image, Jack recognized the face that had haunted his nightmares for 15 years. Chuck Morrison, not grieving father seeking justice for his son. Not aging action star driven by guilt, the man who had murdered Tommy Richardson in cold blood, then spent 15 years positioning Jack Malone to take the fall. Outside, the desert heat shimmered like the flames that had consumed an innocent boy's life. Jack felt the last of his illusions crumble into dust, leaving only the terrible clarity of truth and the devastating weight of what came next. Jack's world tilted sideways, the grainy security footage playing on an endless loop in his mind. Chuck Morrison's face, calm and purposeful as he condemned a young man to death, burned behind his eyelids. 15 years of guilt, 15 years of accepting blame for a murder he didn't commit. It all crystallized into a rage so pure it felt like ice in his veins. He rewound the video, watching Morrison approach Tommy's rig with the practiced efficiency of a professional. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Just a man who had decided that Tommy Richardson needed to die, and Jack Malone needed to carry the burden. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Morrison had been planning this from the beginning. Not 15 years of revenge brewing after his son's death. 15 years of orchestrating Jack's destruction after murdering someone else's son. Tommy hadn't been Chuck Morrison's child. Jack pulled up the cast list for that long-ago film again, scanning for any Richardson in the crew. Nothing. Tommy had just been another young stuntman, eager and trusting, who had somehow become Morrison's target. But why? What had Tommy done to earn Morrison's lethal attention? Jack's memory surfaced fragments from that terrible day. Tommy had been agitated before the stunt, talking about something he'd overheard, something about insurance money and deliberate accidents. He'd come to Jack with concerns about the rig, yes, but also with suspicions about previous incidents on Morrison's films. The motorcycle accident 3 months earlier. The cable failure before that. Tommy had been connecting dots, seeing patterns where everyone else saw bad luck. So Morrison had silenced him, permanently. The anonymous letter made sense now. Kevin Richardson hadn't been warning Jack about Morrison's revenge plot. He'd been revealing Morrison's 15-year deception. The security footage was Kevin's gift to the man who'd taken the blame for his brother's murder, proof that Jack had been a victim too, just one who'd survived long enough to learn the truth. Jack's phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Beautiful work, wasn't it? Clean, professional. Tommy never suspected a thing. Neither did you. All these years you've been paying penance for my artistry. CM. Morrison's arrogance blazed through every word. He couldn't resist taking credit, even now. Especially now, when he thought he had Jack trapped in the perfect endgame. The great Chuck Morrison, action legend, orchestrating a masterpiece of psychological torture. Jack screenshot the message, then called David Kellerman back. "Jack, I was hoping you'd call. We've got your travel arrangements." "Tell Morrison I got his message," Jack said, his voice steady as granite. "All of them, including the video." Silence on the other end. Then Kellerman's voice, smaller now, uncertain. "I'm not sure what you mean." The security footage from Valencia, his confession text just now, Kevin Richardson's letter. "Tell your boss his artistry is about to become very public." "Jack, wait." Jack had already hung up. His phone immediately rang back, but he powered it down. Morrison would be scrambling now, trying to figure out how much Jack knew, how much proof existed. The dynamic had shifted. The hunter was now prey. Jack opened his laptop and began uploading the video file to a cloud drive, creating multiple copies across different servers. Whatever happened next, Morrison's confession would survive. Then he called the one person he knew would answer, regardless of industry blacklists or threatening phone calls. "Ray Hutchins Investigations." "Ray, it's Jack Malone." A pause. Ray had been the insurance investigator on the Valencia fire, the one man who'd kept pushing for answers when everyone else wanted to close the file. He'd believed Jack's protestations of innocence, had suspected the official story was sanitized fiction. "Jesus, Jack, where the hell have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 3 days." 3 days? "Chuck Morrison's been asking questions about you. Subtle ones, through intermediaries. He wanted to know if you were still taking his monthly payments, if you'd shown any signs of instability. I told his people to go to hell, but Jack, something's happening. Something big. Morrison killed Tommy Richardson. I have proof." The line went dead quiet. Then Ray's voice, sharp with professional interest. "What kind of proof?" Security footage showing Morrison sabotaging the escape hatch. His confession via text message. 15 years of evidence that he's been systematically murdering stuntmen and blaming equipment failure. Send me everything. Now. And Jack, don't go home. Don't go anywhere Morrison might expect. If he's been planning this for 15 years, he's not going to let you walk away with proof of murder. Outside Rosa's cafe, Jack could see Sarah and Miguel still talking, their faces bright with concern for him. His carefully built life in Bakersfield suddenly felt precious and fragile, like something that could be destroyed by proximity to the truth. But Tommy Richardson deserved justice, even if it cost Jack everything he'd rebuilt from the ashes of his reputation, especially because Chuck Morrison thought he was too broken to fight back. Jack stepped out of his truck in front of Rosa's cafe, the desert wind carrying the scent of mesquite and hot asphalt. Through the window, he could see Sarah and Miguel hunched over Miguel's phone, their expressions growing more troubled with each swipe. The kid had definitely found the old articles. Jack could tell by the way Sarah's eyes kept darting toward the parking lot, watching for him. The weight of Ray's warning pressed down on his shoulders like a lead blanket. Don't go anywhere Morrison might expect. But these people, Sarah with her quiet strength, Miguel with his eager trust, they were his life now. The only real thing he'd built from the wreckage of his past. Morrison's reach couldn't extend this far into the desert, could it? The bell above Rosa's door chimed as he entered. Miguel looked up from the phone, his young face pale with shock. "Jefe," Miguel said quietly. "You worked on Thunderbolt Canyon? With Chuck Morrison?" Sarah's hand rested protectively on Miguel's shoulder, but her eyes were fixed on Jack with a mixture of awe and fear. Whatever she'd read had changed how she saw him, and Jack felt the familiar ache of watching someone's perception of him shift into something he couldn't control. "Yeah," Jack said, sliding into the booth across from them. "That was a long time ago." "The article says you were the best in Hollywood," Miguel continued, his voice gaining strength. "It says you could make anything look real. Cars, explosions, fights, everything. It also says you killed someone," Sarah said softly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jack felt the other diners' conversations fade as the weight of 15 years pressed down on the small cafe. Rosa herself had emerged from the kitchen, pretending to wipe down tables while listening with the keen attention of someone who'd spent decades collecting stories. "That's what they said," Jack admitted. "What the reports concluded. A young stuntman named Tommy Richardson died because of equipment failure on a fire stunt I coordinated. My responsibility? My failure." Miguel leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "But you don't think it was your fault?" The kid's insight cut straight through Jack's careful deflections. Miguel had grown up around men who carried guilt like scars, who knew the difference between shame over failure and shame over injustice. He could recognize the particular weight Jack had been carrying. "I used to think it was," Jack said. "For 15 years I believed it. But today I found out the truth." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. Her face went white as she read it. "Jack," she whispered, "someone's asking about you. A man came by the shop an hour ago, professional-looking, expensive suit. He wanted to know your routines, where you lived, who you spent time with." The blood in Jack's veins turned to ice water. Morrison wasn't just planning to destroy him professionally. He was mapping Jack's entire life, identifying everyone who mattered to him. Sarah, Miguel, even Rosa, whose only crime was serving him coffee and treating him with human decency. "We need to leave," Jack said, standing abruptly. "All of us, now." "Jack, what's happening?" Sarah's voice carried the edge of someone who'd finally reached her limit of cryptic explanations and half-truths. Before he could answer, his phone powered itself back on, a feature he'd forgotten about, some automatic restart programmed into the device. Immediately, it began buzzing with missed calls and messages. 17 missed calls from unknown numbers, 12 voicemails, and one new text that made his blood freeze. "Lovely little town, Bakersfield. So many nice people who care about you. It would be tragic if your past brought danger to their doorstep. Come to Los Angeles, Jack. Come alone, or Sarah and Miguel might discover that accidents happen everywhere, even in the desert. CM." Jack's hands shook as he showed the message to Sarah. Her face cycled through confusion, fear, and finally a cold anger that reminded him she'd survived her own share of dangerous men. "He's threatening us," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "This man, Morrison, he's using us to control you." Miguel stood up, his teenager's body trying to project an adult's confidence. "We should call the police." "With what?" Jack asked, his voice hollow. "A text message from an unknown number? Chuck Morrison is Hollywood royalty. I'm a disgraced stunt coordinator who's been taking his money for 15 years. Who do you think they'll believe?" The truth settled over them like dust from a distant explosion. Morrison had orchestrated this perfectly, isolating Jack from his allies, neutralizing his support system, forcing him into a corner where the only choice was surrender or watch innocent people pay the price for his defiance. But as Jack looked at Sarah's determined face and Miguel's fierce loyalty, he realized Morrison had made a crucial miscalculation. For 15 years, Jack had been a broken man living alone with his guilt. Now he was something far more dangerous, a man with people worth protecting, with something real to fight for. The trap was closing, but Jack Malone was no longer the same prey Morrison had been hunting. Jack stood in Rosa's cafe, surrounded by the people who had become his family, feeling the weight of 15 years of deception crystallize into perfect clarity. Morrison's threat hung in the air like gasoline fumes, waiting for the spark that would consume everything Jack had rebuilt from the ashes of his reputation. "No," he said quietly. Sarah looked up from the threatening text message, her eyes questioning. Miguel shifted beside her, ready to follow Jack's lead despite not fully understanding the danger. "No," Jack repeated, his voice gaining strength. "I'm not running. I'm not hiding. And I'm sure as hell not leaving you two unprotected while I dance to Chuck Morrison's tune. He pulled out his phone and dialed Ray Hutchins's number. The investigator answered on the first ring. Jack? Tell me you're somewhere safe. I'm exactly where I need to be, Jack said, his voice carrying across the small cafe. Ray, I need you to listen carefully. Chuck Morrison just threatened 2 innocent people to force my compliance. I want that on record. Jesus, Jack. He's been playing a 15-year game, but he made one crucial mistake. He assumed I was still the broken man who took his blood money and disappeared into the desert. Jack looked at Sarah and Miguel, their faces reflecting trust and determination. He doesn't understand that some things are worth fighting for. Morrison's next call came within minutes, but this time Jack put it on speakerphone. The action star's voice filled Rose's cafe, smooth and confident as silk over steel. Jack, I trust you. Received my message about your friends? I did. Jack's voice was steady, controlled. And I have a message for you, Chuck. I know what you did to Tommy Richardson. I have the security footage. I have your confession texts. And in about 30 minutes, every major news outlet in the country is going to know that America's action hero is actually a cold-blooded murderer. Silence stretched across the connection, so complete Jack could hear Morrison's careful breathing. When the star finally spoke, his voice had shed its polished veneer, revealing something reptilian underneath. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Malone. 15 years I've been planning this. Every detail, every contingency. Your pathetic little life, your repair shop, your surrogate family, I can destroy it all with a phone call. Maybe, Jack said, but you'll do it from a prison cell. Ray Hutchins has copies of everything. So does Kevin Richardson. So do 3 different news organizations. Kill me, kill Sarah and Miguel, kill everyone in this cafe. The truth is already out there. The connection crackled with Morrison's fury. Tommy Richardson was a nobody, a punk kid who thought he could blackmail me over some accidents. He got what he deserved. He was 24 years old, Jack said quietly. He had a brother who loved him, parents who trusted me to keep their son safe. And you murdered him because he figured out you were killing people for insurance money. Those stunts were dangerous anyway. I just improved the odds. The insurance payouts funded better projects, better films. Tommy's death meant something. Tommy's death meant you're a killer who let an innocent man take the blame for 15 years. Morrison's laugh was ugly, desperate. Innocent? You took my money, Jack. Every month for 15 years. Blood money. And you knew it. You're as guilty as... I took guilt money, Jack interrupted. Money I thought was compensation for my failure. But it was really your payment for my silence, wasn't it? Insurance that I'd stay broken, stay hidden, stay quiet while you planned whatever this endgame was supposed to be. Through the phone, Jack could hear Morrison's careful composure finally cracking. You were supposed to suffer. You were supposed to live with that guilt until it destroyed you. The great Jack Malone, reduced to fixing cars in the desert, haunted by a death that wasn't even his fault. The confession hung in the air like a smoking gun. Morrison had just admitted everything, the murder, the cover-up, the 15-year psychological torture, in front of witnesses, on a recorded call that Ray was undoubtedly preserving. Sarah reached across the table and took Jack's hand. Miguel straightened in his chair, no longer trying to project adult confidence because he'd found real courage in the truth. Even Rosa had stopped pretending to work, standing behind the counter with tears in her eyes for the man she'd watched carry undeserved shame for so long. It's over, Chuck, Jack said softly. Tommy's going to get justice. His family is going to know the truth, and you're going to face what you've really done. The line went dead, but the silence felt different now. Not the crushing weight of secrets, but the clean emptiness that comes after truth has burned away 15 years of lies. Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Ray. FBI is moving to arrest Morrison now. You did it, Jack. Tommy's family can finally have peace. Jack looked around Rosa's cafe, at Sarah's proud smile, at Miguel's fierce grin, at the ordinary people who had given an extraordinary gift, the chance to rebuild not just a life, but a soul worth defending. The past and present had finally collided, But instead of destroying him, the impact had revealed what he'd really become, not the broken man Morrison had been hunting, but someone who had learned that redemption wasn't about escaping the past. It was about having the courage to face it. 3 months later, Jack stood in the same courthouse where Chuck Morrison had been sentenced to life without parole, watching Tommy Richardson's parents emerge into the California sunlight. Kevin Richardson walked beside them, his arm around his mother's shoulders, his face carrying something Jack hadn't seen in their previous meetings: peace. The media circus had moved on to fresher scandals, but the Richardson family had stayed for the civil proceedings, the insurance investigations, the slow machinery of justice grinding Morrison's empire to dust. Jack had testified in every hearing, his voice steady as he recounted 15 years of carrying blame that belonged to a killer. Kevin approached him on the courthouse steps, his handshake firm and deliberate. "My brother would have liked you," Kevin said simply. He always respected people who stood up when it mattered. Jack nodded, finding no words adequate for the moment. Some debts couldn't be repaid, only honored by living differently. The drive back to Bakersfield stretched through desert landscape that looked exactly the same, but felt fundamentally altered. Jack's phone contained 17 interview requests, 3 book deal offers, and 1 message from David Kellerman, delivered through his lawyer, asking if Jack would consider consulting on a documentary about Morrison's crimes. He'd declined them all. Rosa's Cafe appeared through the heat shimmer like a mirage, its neon sign flickering the same welcome it had offered every day for the past 5 years. Jack parked in his usual spot, noting Miguel's truck beside the building, the kid's tools already scattered around the engine of Mrs. Hernandez's ancient Buick. The bell chimed as he entered, and Rosa looked up from her coffee pot with the same knowing smile she'd worn since the first news van had appeared in her parking lot 3 months ago. "Famous man," she said, pouring his usual black coffee without being asked. "Still want the turkey sandwich?" Still want the turkey sandwich. Some things were worth preserving exactly as they were. Sarah occupied their booth, papers spread across the scarred formica, insurance forms, building permits, business licenses. She looked up as he approached, her smile carrying the particular warmth reserved for shared survivors. "How did it go?" she asked. "Kevin's parents got closure. Morrison's assets are being liquidated to compensate his victims. The insurance companies are paying out claims they denied for 15 years. Jack slid into the booth, his shoulders finally relaxing. "It's finished. And the Hollywood people? The offers?" Jack sipped his coffee, watching Miguel through the window as the kid patiently explained engine repair to Mrs. Hernandez's granddaughter. The girl listened with the same intense focus Miguel had once brought to Jack's stories, hungry for knowledge that might transform her understanding of how things worked. "I'm exactly where I belong," he said. Sarah's papers told their own story of new beginnings. The repair shop was expanding, hiring 2 more mechanics, adding a tow truck service. Miguel had enrolled in community college engineering classes while keeping his job, his confidence transformed by discovering that his instincts about people, about Jack, had been proven right when it mattered most. "The Richardson family set up a foundation," Jack said. "Safety training for young stunt performers. They want me on the advisory board." Sarah nodded approvingly. "You'll do it." It wasn't a question. She understood that redemption required action, that peace came not from forgetting the past, but from ensuring it served some larger purpose. Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Ray Hutchins. Morrison's confession led to 3 more arrests. Producers who knew about the insurance scheme. "You saved a lot of lives, Jack." Through the window, he watched Miguel demonstrate proper torque technique, his hands sure and steady, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd learned that knowledge shared was knowledge multiplied. The kid had absorbed more than mechanical skills during their years together. He'd learned that broken things could be rebuilt stronger, that second chances were earned through daily choices to be better than your worst moments. The late afternoon sun slanted through Rosa's windows, casting the same golden light that had welcomed Jack 5 years ago when he'd first stumbled into this place carrying 15 years of undeserved guilt. He'd been looking for nothing more than coffee and anonymity, a place to exist quietly while the world forgot Jack Thunder Malone had ever lived. Instead, he'd found Sarah's steady strength, Miguel's eager trust, Rosa's unquestioning acceptance. He'd discovered that redemption wasn't a destination but a daily practice, that family could be chosen as surely as it could be born into. Morrison had spent 15 years orchestrating the perfect revenge. But his greatest failure was assuming that broken people stayed broken. He'd never understood that some wounds, properly tended, heal into foundations strong enough to support not just survival, but genuine transformation. Jack finished his coffee and walked outside, where Miguel was teaching Mrs. Hernandez's granddaughter how to check oil levels. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, vast and patient and full of possibilities. He was exactly where he belonged,